Welcome to Berhampur University Special Podcasting Series. I am Dr. Jayant Panda, Associate Professor in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We bring thought leaders and inspiring minds from across the globe to share their experiences and wisdom. And today, we have the privilege of hosting Honorable Justice Shiranee Tilakawardane, former Justice of Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. Welcome, ma'am, to our show.
Thank you.
Justice Tilakawardane has a distinguished career marked by several firsts. The first woman to be appointed as State Counsel to the Attorney General's Department, the first woman judge in the High Court, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. She also served as the acting Chief Justice of the country. Her contribution extended beyond the judiciary. She has worked tirelessly on issues of child rights, women rights, environmental law, judiciary integrity. She has been a key consultant for numerous international organizations like UNDP, ILO, and Commonwealth Secretariat. Her work continued to shape judicial education, equality, and human rights across the Asia-Pacific region. Justice Tilakawardane, thank you for joining today. It's an absolutely honor to have you on our show. I would like to start our interaction with the first questions. Your journey is truly inspiring, and yesterday I got an opportunity to listen to you, and your presentations were truly insightful and inspirational. I would like to ask you that can you please share us the journey that led you to become the first woman state counsel to the Attorney General's Department in Sri Lanka, and what inspired you to pursue law?
First, thank you for having me. And I'm delighted and privileged to be part of this little group who are working in the Berhampur University in Odisha, and especially with the young students who have organized this little interview room. And it's really a beautiful place to be in, and a beautiful group of people whom I've been working with for the last 3 days. And
Thank
you
so
for
much.
the invitation.
Madam, we are really curious to know that your journey that leads to become the first woman state counsel to Attorney General's Department of Sri Lanka, and what inspired you to pursue law?
Well, my first intention was to become an interior decorator, or in the alternative, to be an artist, sitting in Paris, having a little studio apartment, having wine and bread, and enjoying painting on the banks of the Seine River. But my father didn't agree with that. He was a consultant surgeon, and he believed that women and his son should be educated, and that education was power. He always used that phrase to us. And you have to being a woman doesn't matter. You all, my sister, myself, and my brother had to educate ourselves. And he was no problem about that, because he was equally strong about education. And looking back today on my journey in life, I think one of the best ways of empowerment, of overcoming discrimination, if you have the opportunities to educate yourself, don't lose it. Because it is the first step to the most amazing and exciting journey in your life. And this is to all the people who are also struggling with priorities. Do I educate X or Y of my children? Just note that educating your children is the best investment you can make for the future, for the intergenerational well-being. And I would recommend it from the bottom of my heart.
It's truly inspiring you, ma'am, to listen to you, and your journey is truly motivational for a lot of youngsters who are listening to you. As someone who broke numerous barriers in the judiciary, what challenges did you face in this pioneering role, and how did you overcome them?
And you're going back a long way. You're talking of the late 70s and the early 80s. So at that time, there was no language about discrimination. There was nothing called human rights. We didn't even study human rights in this law curriculum. So all we could, and as a woman, as a young girl, all I could see was a huge burden in the disparities, having lived in a South Asian country, having come from a fairly privileged background. I saw the disparity. I saw the differences. And when I went into court, I saw the huge difference between the power of the accused and the disempowerment of the victim. That really brought up. So I wanted to be one of those people. As a lawyer, I wanted to empower the disadvantage. And I couldn't articulate it at that age, but I just thought, I want to be this person who appears for the victim, which was the prosecutor's department. I went into court and I watched these giants in our country leading prosecutions, and I thought, what an metamorphosis of the being of the victim in total victimhood, being transformed into the victor when the conviction was given. And we have all these safeguards of proof beyond reasonable doubt, innocence, the innocence of the accused is a presumption of innocence. So many things weighted in favor of the accused. So in some instances, and in countries like us, where the police and all these different organizations should support the victims, and the poor and the marginalized, they should be the guardians of them, the politicians giving policies. I saw a dearth of that. And I thought, if in my little space, I can stand up in court and be a great prosecutor, because nobody, if I was in the excuse me, if I was in the private bar, would ever come to me with a murder case or something. And the only way I could do was getting into the Attorney General's department. So I applied, I got into the position, and I was on the list of people who were chosen. I was never given that letter of appointment. It was only years later, after I had retired, that I met the secretary of that board, Dr. Jayant Kumar Panda. And he told me that the papers were ready for the signature, and the acting Attorney General of that time, who later became a Supreme Court judge, had said, I can't pamper women, I can't look after this child, this girl, I cannot do it. She will never be able to go out stations and go to around Sri Lanka prosecuting. So either she goes or I go. So it was an ultimatum. That was not even, that was not I guess the person who made the decision at that time was, I believe, the minister, really didn't have a decision. I was just, a woman who anyway had no place in it. And this was our journey in those. So we walked in to this hostile almost, and because we were not wanted, they never knew that women could be competent. And today, one of the things I always felt in my journey through the department was, it had many challenges, but one of it was, I will prove them. I have to. I don't have a choice. Because today when I see 50%, 45% women coming in the Attorney Generals and doing exceedingly abundantly well, it made whatever I went through pale into insignificance. Because whatever it was a journey that had to be done. And I think God gave me that amazing strength and sustenance and innovation and versatility. Of course, I did fall flat sometimes on my face, and I would, because you are always being judged. You're always they're talking about you, not about your ability as a lawyer. And there was, because I studied, I know more than the maximum I could do. I'd take all the case law, I'd go into the courts, and I'd never take my books out because I was going all around the country. And remember, at that time, there were no bathrooms for women. Then when in South Asia, they go behind the wall of the court and they're in hide. Women had no place for that. I was a real bare necessity, but that did not deter me. And it was, it was that journey. It was important to do that. It was important to go through those disappointments where you have a burden to almost overcome before you start your submissions. And I would bring out my books in the courthouse because they'd all be making jokes and say, oh, so you're a girl. And I'd bring out my books just before the argument, and suddenly they would quieten down because it was some of them just books which may not have been totally relevant, which I took just to feel secure. And they'd look at it, and then they'd start looking at me. And judges who began with, so what have you, young lady, have to say? Sat down and started taking notes. And that is hard work, commitment, and a passion.
Wonderful. Justice Tilakawardane, you are the role model and you work extensively for the women's rights and gender equalities. You have been a strong advocate for women's rights and gender equality, and how do you view the progress made globally in this area, and what more need to be done?
So why am I interested in women and children's rights, in the rights of anybody who's disadvantaged? Gender orientation, the poor, disabled, young children. Why am I doing it? Because when I started studying law, especially when I started studying the chapters on human rights, the Charter of Human Rights contains the core values of how we must behave, interact one with another in the position of what we must do and how we must do it. And it clearly says, how do we interact with other human beings of any caste, race, religion, whatever the discipline may be? It is about respect, dignity, it's about independence and autonomy. You give that to the person who you're talking to. It could be a beggar on the street who is so underprivileged, or it could be to the most powerful person on this globe. Those days we'd be saying the President of America, but today we just say President of our countries, because sometimes the power is a dynamic thing and it moves. And I realized that if I'm going to be good in my law, I have to recognize equality. And equality is the key. I would say it's the grundnorm of all development, all interaction with human beings against each other. It's about respect, it's about dignity, and recognizing that. And where that is not there, you work towards empowerment of that group. So when I came, it was like 40% women, 60% men, very android-centered. The myths and stereotypes, all those things was very heavily burdened against the women, burdened against the children. So look at what was said: behind every powerful man, there's a good woman, there's a strong. That was the maximum of the recognition of our power. And children were told, you can be seen but not be heard. These were the underlying factors that told us how we should interact, and that is not so. Children have equal rights. Women have equal rights. Today, that is what our international law and our national law says. And there is so much work. So let me give you a little example. Many of our judgments, especially in India, Sri Lanka, South Asia, acquitted the accused in rape, depending on what the women wore, where the women were walking at that time, and the choices women made in short. So when you talk of the Charter of Human Rights, and that is why I prefer the word equality to equity, because it can be measured. Our Constitution says both have equal rights. So I have the right to wear what I want to by my choices. I have the right to movement. I should be able to go jogging in the night and be perfectly safe. But we are not safe. It is a world that is a paradigm of violence, and violence because of a norm and a stereotype that says in our religion, in our culture, in our beliefs, that men are superior to women. That doesn't work in this time and age. Because in this time and age, it says in the international CEDAW and all these other international legislation that is out there, conventions and whatever, it says that all are equal. And that I want to respect that equality, and I want to be respected as an equal, because I grew up in a place at a time when you were not visible, the invisibility of the women. And that's what scares me about what is happening with the whole AI situation. It definitely has its positive things. It has a lot of advantages for humanity. But my question is it ethical? Is there integrity in AI? Because if it depends entirely on the big data, the elements, and it depends on the algorithm. It depends on the predictive data that has been put in, which very often in countries are protected by the Intellectual Property Act. So in such a situation, we can't examine who put that data in. It could be a person who was completely biased against color, against race, against gender. It could be anything. So that is the only data that comes through. So the outcome of that, we might become all invisible. And I am fighting for the visibility of women, children, poor, students, because they don't have much of a voice. Sometimes they're suppressed when the ideas they're given a certain place, but not beyond that. So I believe in this because this is the foundation of the law, and why the law is needed. The law is needed. The judges simply have to act within the parameters of independence, impartiality, equality, all three.
To safeguard the rights.
Yeah, sorry?
To safeguard the rights of the children.
So that is the duty. Those are the core values of the judge, and that is what we promise when we say with great pomposity, all people are equal before the law. Are they? No, they're not. How rich are you? How powerful is your lawyer as against some young state counsel who can barely articulate the arguments? So we are not equal. So we have to, what do we do therefore? So we work in the system, we work in the process, so that at the end of it, they are becoming equal. For instance, if they have no finances, we build up our legal aid to a situation where we do produce a competent lawyer who will safeguard the rights of the victims. How else? When we have legislation, like in our country, we have a very, very good victim witness protection law. We give it because protecting the powerless is a duty of the state and every person who's heading both the legislation and the executive and the judicial. It is our duty. And that is very important. So that is why it is only Human Rights Charter. It is the only recognition and implementation by the law who promises it. So then we have to have that. We cannot, these core values, and I mean, look at the backlog of cases. It shows there's something lacking. If you have to wait so long, justice is not being delivered expeditiously. It matters to that victim who's poor, whose sole breadwinner in their life has been slaughtered simply because they don't get out of a property that is anyway does not belong to the wealthy landlord. So should that person not be important before the eyes of the law? We have developed the Domestic Violence Act. We have taught the judges, and that is really important. What I'm talking to you about equality, the importance is the sensitivity and awareness, and it being the lens through which every other determination is made. When you take a decision as a president, as a minister, as a judge, are you taking that through a situation where both parties are brought to be on equal terms? Do they speak to us, or do we give more hearing, and are we more receptive to one side? That's called partiality. It is not equality. So where there is inequality, there is a division of power. So one power gets discriminated against, the other power has more. And inevitably the person who has more power, tends to suppress those with less power. And the way to, that's not a balanced society. So then there's exploitation, there's so much of things that we see. There is an abuse of power. Accountability is not an abuse of power. It is about equality. It is about impartiality. When I take a decision about somebody, am I going to give that person a job or not? Is that a decision I'm taking on an impartial, neutral basis? Or do I want to give that job to somebody who is related to me? Somebody. Do we build up these systems that in the end corrupts governance and it corrupts a country? And that is the worst that can happen, because the end of it is economic collapse. We have had that in Sri Lanka.
Justice Tilakawardane, you have worked very extensively on environmental law, and it is one of the critical areas you work on. Could you highlight a few cases or policies where the judiciary has played a transformative role in environmental protection?
I think many countries, especially I see the South, you had beginning with Justice Bhagwati from India, because we in the Commonwealth, we exchange decisions, we exchange ideas, because we use what is called precedent. And it goes laterally also. We take what our peers have said on the Supreme Court, and we see this is a wonderful interpretation that has been. We use the international norms. So it's a very rich culture from which we find how the material is how to do our decision. So if at the heart of it is equality, then environmental justice is so important. It is the sustainability, not just of this generation, but of the intergenerational accountability. And to me, right now, the entire globe should be thinking about concentrating not on gaining wealth in countries and wars, on the environment. Every act we do. And we should be celebrating, not people who are guzzling petrol in their four-wheel drives, but on the people who are thinking of alternatives, people who are working hard to give us an environment of clean air, because without clean air, without clean water, we are destroying the substrate on which you and I and everybody is standing on. Because we talk of the right of life. What right of life is that? And very often it is not about an accumulation of wealth. It is about being abusive in your power, wanting more power than anybody else, wanting to dominate. I mean, I think that's a sadness of power, because powers should be distributed. And there's this wonderful gifts in the really, really poor people, innovative ways of dealing with the environment. We are not celebrating them. We are so taken up with the highest, the tallest tower, the largest, whatever. We have a whole book about it. We do the most important. We have these. We should be celebrating this. This school is wonderful because they're concentrating on the environment. They're conserving water. We have drip irrigation. How do we teach every farmer? And their AI is very important. But my fear about AI is, and as I discussed in my paper, all what AI is doing to the law, to the environment, there must be a check and a balance. Right now, it's like, if I can say figuratively, is that, we have so many rules and laws and don'ts and do's in our normal world. In the virtual world, there is no check and balance. And very often people shy away from challenging them even. So I like to teach even I'd like to do, I'm not in a programming now, but if I'm given the opportunity to see, you cannot have an artificial intelligence that gives you ChatGPT 4 and all these latest programs and softwares and things, unless we have an accounting of what is the cost. And can't we do it cheaper? And as I said in my presentation,
it's truly very insightful, your presentation, and you are linking AI with the climate change, and you have developed a lot of new perspectives.
Yes.
Can you put on some light on how that AI and climate change?
But I think it's extremely useful in protecting lives, determining weather patterns. It's extremely useful in a disaster management situation where you have AI templates coming to help you, AI innovation. But at the same time, if it is going to cost the extractions of ores from the depth of the earth using a huge amount of energy, if it's going to deplete the earth of water for cooling of the server tubs, I mean, all of it. If you're going to use that, if you're going to destroy the environment in the process, I think we need more than, and I like to talk to somebody whose work I've been reading, Vivek Wadhwa. I don't know whether Professor Vivek, but don't mean to be distressful, but Professor Vivek Wadhwa is one of the people I've been following the literature that is out, the emails that circulates around the globe. He started developing working on the health sector because his wife died of cancer. And he made a promise that he would come and he would use all his knowledge on AI to develop the perfect system, bringing the cost of health and the lives of people better in India. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that a marvelous objective? So yes, that would be, and when I saw that is ethical, that is integrity, the pattern, the process, the objective. And it's sometimes too much power destroys you. Your perspective changes.
Justice Tilakawardane, before concluding this interview, I would like to understand that what advice would you give to your law student, and especially women, who aspire to create a meaningful change in legal and judiciary system?
Oh, I'd give it to to, it's not especially women, I'd give it to all students. Be careful that your intergenerational rights are protected. Your basic rights, as I said in the hymn, are you being respected? Are you being given dignity? Are you just, is your voice being heard? You know, when I wanted to be the first woman state council, my voice was not even heard. I was not even asked, can you do this job? And I had just by then, when I was finally asked to do my second interview, I had to go back again. I went to the States, I worked. It was a wonderful period of my life. I have a very deep belief that there is a power above, and I call that power God, who guides us, that our destiny is already there. So I would, if anything that happens, I have that way of saying, well, this is it, it's chapter, it's okay. I will be somehow, you know, go to a better place. And it has happened. My entire journey, whatever in that instance I thought was negative, has proved to be some of the best, the most productive times of my life. So what I would like to say is, I'd like to tell the students, look at what you're struggling with right now. Learn the lessons it has to teach you, but also try to get an abundance of energy, optimism, idealism. You know, at this stage, I still believe in idealism. I believe in people. I don't want to be a negative person who is so, you know, sick of life. No, believe, reach for the stars. And I'm telling this to all of you. Don't limit yourself, and don't never be scared. Well, at the worst, they can just bump you off. So, you know, maybe that's your time, maybe that's your destiny. But empower yourself. Work harder than the next person. That was my key. I knew I worked so hard. And many women have done that. And I think in the future, I might be fighting for the rights of men, because I see the boom of women. Women are educating, they are staying the long journey. You know, because we're all equal. Respect. I would say respect and equality. Hear, listen more than you're talking. And then you will evolve. Be the person you have as a role. Be the person you want to be. And barriers, sometimes you don't have to jump over them. You can crawl under them. You can go around them. Be versatile. And just, you know, just be a good person. You help others. It's amazing where that help comes from. And remember that intergenerational, because sometimes it means limiting your powers so that you can be responsible. You can be accountable. And this whole, you know, we give tags of good governance and, you know, what is this? It is about being a holistic person in body, mind, and soul. And to me, you know, I do regular yoga, and that really helps me to have my perspective balanced. I make mistakes, I fall, I struggle, I stand up, learn the lessons. I will. And I hope you won't ever repeat your mistakes again.
Thank you so much, Justice Tilakawardane, for sharing your invaluable insights and experience with us today. Your remarkable journey and strong commitment to justice, equality, and human rights serve as an inspiration to countless individuals, including our listener here at Berhampur Universities. So thank you once again. Keep watching, share, and subscribe this podcasting series of Berhampur Universities, and we are committed to bring the brightest mind to inspire you, empower your thoughts, and ignite your future. Thank you for watching this podcasting series. Thank you.